Hey, today's kind of a tricky one. So, elapsed time. So, elapsed time is really thinking of if you start something and you end something, how much time has passed. So, if you look at the example on the top, like let's just say that you started to play outside at 1:30 and you ended at 4:47, how would you figure out how much time you spent outside? So one of the easy ways, now if we were at school, we'd have what they call a Judy clock, which you could actually move the hands and count, which would be a lot easier, but of course we're not there. So if you put it on a number line, or if you were just to count and you say 1:30, you would keep track of the hours that you would count to get as close to 4:47 as possible without going over. So you'd have 1 hour would be 2:30, 2 hours, 3:30, 3 hours, 4:30. So 1 hour would be 2:30, 2 hours would be 3:30, 3 hours would be 4:30, and I can't get any closer to 4:47 adding hours. So what I know is that I'm 3 hours, and then I have to figure out how many minutes to get to 4:47. So I would count up. So if I did plus 10, that would get me to 4:40, and then plus 7 would get me to 4:47. So if I have plus 10 and plus 7, and I add those together, I'd get 3 hours and 17 minutes that I would have played outside. Alright, so you get into today's assignment. It starts out fairly easy. So if your start time is 1, and your elapsed time is 2 hours, I always do this with jumps. So I think 1, and every jump that I make is an hour. There's 2, there's 3. So I'd end up at 3 o'clock. Now, it gets a little trickier when you get down to that third one, where it says plus 18 minutes, plus an hour and 55 minutes. So some people are pretty good at having strategies. Some people just kind of add it up. The hard part with time is that if you're doing this 4:55 one, you have to remember that the next hour comes at 4:60. So some kids will stack and add, which would be a puzzle penguin way to do it. 8, 13, 5, 6, 7. So they would say something like 4:73. Well, there's no such time as 4:73, because if you add 60 of those minutes, it would bump you over to the next hour. So it'd be 5:13. So it can be done. It's just a tricky way to do it. So for me, I'm always an add up kind of guy. I'm going to change over to blue. So if I were doing that 4:55, and I were adding 18 minutes, I would add 10 minutes first, or better yet, 5 would get you to 5 o'clock, and then you add 5 again, which is adding those 10, so then it's 5:05. So I've added 10 minutes to that, and then I'd have to add 8 more minutes, so that would get me to 5:13. Now, this one, even though you guys know I'm not a big subtraction guy, I would actually add 2 hours to that, and then I would take away 5 minutes. So if I did 2:15, I'd do 3:15, 4:15, and I always write that down. And then I'd have to subtract those 5 minutes, because it wasn't 2 full hours, it was 1 hour and 55 minutes. So if I was at 4:15 after 2 hours, I'd have to take 5 minutes off, so it would have been 4:10 for an hour and 15 minutes, or an hour and 55 minutes. Now, this one you actually have to figure out how much time has passed. So if it's from 2:30 to 4:42, I really do the same thing. So 2:30, 3:30, 4:30. So that's 2 hours, because I made 2 jumps, and that puts me at 4:30. And then I have to get to 4:42, so I'd do a plus 10 plus 2. So it'd be 2 hours and 12 minutes. Now the third section, you really have to work backwards, which is always kind of a tricky thing. So if you end at 4:15 and the elapsed time is 3 hours, you do 3:15, 2:15, 1:15. Must have been the start time, because then you can go back and you can say, okay, if you started at 1:15, I'll switch over to red, 2:15, 3:15, 4:15. That's 3 hours, 3 jumps. A little trickier when you're not doing full hours, but you guys would be good. All right, so when you have elapsed time, there are different strategies that you guys can use. So if you have that whole 2:30 to 4:42, what's the elapsed time? You could make a number line. So you could draw that number line. You could start at 2:30. Then you could put an hour later, 3:30. You could put an hour later, 4:30. And then you could have your 4:42. So you'd have 2 full jumps of an hour. And then you would add up another 8 minutes to get to 42. You'd add another, 10 into 2. You could just add without using that number line, but with that one, remember, you always got to be careful, because once you get to 60, it regroups into that next hour. You could do 2:30 plus 2 hours, and then 12 minutes. That's like what I would do, probably what a Max would do, probably what an Anna would do. Oops, sorry, wrong one. Okay, the last page, really same activities. It's just putting them in a word problem. So Loretta left her friend's house at 3:45. She had been there for 2 hours and 20 minutes. What time did she get there? So this is one of those work backwards ones. So it's saying, when did she arrive? Well, it'd be 2 hours sooner. So if I'm going backwards, I know I should have probably put it that way. So it'd be 2:45, 1:45 would be 2 hours sooner. And then I'd have to take 20 minutes off of that. So I could do minus 10 would be 35, minus 10 would be 25. So must have got there at 1:25. So tricky, we can take off the check for understanding too. All right, good luck today. The elapsed time's kind of tricky. The IXLs are good. See you.